So, hi everyone, I'm Lucy and I've come down from Hamilton today. Why am I here? I'm by no means a scientist or anything like that. In fact, I work for a market research company called Versus Research. So, we were commissioned by Otago Regional Council to conduct some research with the purpose of clarifying values amongst the residents and defining what matters most to the residents when it comes to managing the waterways. And I have to say, this has been an awesome project to be involved in, and I have really enjoyed it. So it's a privilege to be here today to present to a wider audience. So, what did we do? We did a two-staged project for this. So, we started with an online qualitative component. Qualitative research is really good for sort of discovering and finding out the underlying values for people. It puts that context and it puts that why. So rather than just saying X% of people said this, it's really finding out what they value deep down. Following this, we did a quantitative survey of 1,000 residents across the Otago region. So this was also done online, and we offered out postal invitations so that those without online methods could contribute as well. I'd just like to sort of go away from what I was actually going to say here and just bring up a comment that actually, Gretchen, you said when we were doing our standing wiggling discussion, and that was there's got to be more that motivates people than money. And actually that's led in really well, because you're right. You're 100% right, and this is what this research has found. And that's why that qualitative component was so important, because it really did look at those deep down motivations that people feel towards the waterways. So in the quantitative survey, we looked at how people were using the waterways. We gave them a list of 23 different activities, and we asked them, which of these have you done in the last 12 months? So for the purpose of ease of interpretation, we've grouped these into three broad categories. So first of all, we have activities that are out of the water. So we have 91% of people that mentioned that they'd done this in the last 12 months. These included things like relaxing or sitting beside the waterways. We had just walking alongside the waterways. We had photography, feeding the ducks, those sort of things. The most popular mentioned here was 68% of people said they enjoy the waterways for relaxing. When it came to in the water, we had 65% of people that mentioned that they had done a in the water activity in the last 12 months. So of course this included the likes of boating, swimming, kayaking, those sort of things. The most commonly performed was swimming, surprisingly. In fact, actually yesterday in the Waikato I was swimming, so I don't know what this cold weather is like here. As well as this, we had collection and use. So this included things like drinking water for human use as well as stock use. We had fishing, collecting seashells, collecting kaimoana, those sort of things. Drinking water was obviously the most commonly performed in this. So when it comes to use and interaction, each type of use carries with it a different purpose and therefore different expectations of the role of the water in that interaction. In the qualitative research, we found that this sort of fell into two really broad categories, and that was group use and individual use. And they were quite different in how people used the water and therefore what their expectations would be of the role of water in this case. Group use was primarily focused on recreational activities, and with this, there was a connection with others, so it was an outward connection. These activities were primarily performed in the water, so the likes of your boating and your swimming and all of those sort of things. And so because they were in the water, aspects such as water cleanliness is important, and water health. Can I actually get in there without getting sick? Interestingly, travelling to these waterways was not an issue and actually became part of the experience. So people formed attachments with certain places, and that's where me and my mates and me and my extended family group would go to and enjoy the waterways. On the other side, we have individual use. So while group use was really outward and bonding with others, this one was really about finding your inner self and your zen and all of those sort of things. So because of that, this was primarily performed outside of the water. So your likes of the relaxing and the sitting that we saw earlier, the likes of walking alongside the waterway. Because this is all about finding your zen and whatnot, the aesthetics were really important. So what it actually looks like. They don't really care what's in the water, but as long as it's all beautiful and nice and this wonderful backdrop, then that was good because I can therefore find my zen. Conversely to group use, these waterways were closer, so they were places that people could get to easily where they wanted to find their zen, I guess. So once we looked at the use and interactions and how people were using it differently, we then took it down another layer and we thought, so what do they feel about the waterways and how does this sort of tie in with how they're using it? At this really surface level, we could see some beliefs coming through here, and they were basically that water is always going to be there. Whatever, it's there, it's part of my life. Water will always be available, it will be unrestricted, and it'll always be accessible. This was described really nicely by one respondent as a backdrop to our lives. This is formed particularly, I guess, because of our culture generally. In a New Zealand context, we're an island and we're surrounded by water. You know, it's there. We expect it to be there. We're used to it being there. It's pretty hard to avoid seeing a waterway most of the time. The Otago region, you have a beautiful region that encompasses a wide range of waterways, from streams to lakes to rivers to beaches. So for these people, this is the backdrop to their lives, and they just expect that it will continue to be there. We then started looking into the values that they were placing on the waterways. So again, at the surface level, these values were largely focused on themselves. They were actually quite selfish. It was about a pursuit of pleasure. I want to go to the waterways and I want to enjoy it, whether it's a group use or an individual use. You know, the waterway becomes the facilitator in this enjoyment. Water is there for me. It's always there, and I'll always use it, and I'll enjoy using it because that is its purpose. Okay. These values were largely focused in the present, so they were looking at the now, how water is in my life now. And we thought, okay, well that's cool. But what do you really, really value about the water? Because water is, as the respondents put it, it's a constant and it's always there, we needed to make them think about what it would be like if it wasn't. So what we did is we got them to write a eulogy. We said, it's gone. Your favourite waterway, it's not there anymore. You can't go find your zen. You can't go camping and playing with all your friends around the waterways. It's gone. No more. And what we saw was a massive shift in language used. They were scared. They were worried. They were actually grieving. And these, the eulogies, they were beautiful. Dead water equals no life. There was anger, there was shock, there was retrospective thinking, well, we could have done more. There was a huge shift at this stage from that sort of selfish focus that I was talking about earlier to one that became more collective. So it was less about water and me, and it was water and everybody. And that's when finally we started getting these deeper, more embedded values. And with this, the motivation is more than money. We started seeing them focusing on the past and the future rather than the now. So when they looked at the past, they started talking about meaningful relationships with the water. It almost became a family member. The way they were talking about it was like your long lost aunt that you haven't really talked to over the years, and all of a sudden she's gone, and man, I wish I had just called her every so often. Man, I wish we had done more for the water. They started thinking about history, the fact that the water has existed for so many years and that it's always been there. And my great-grandfather and my great-great-great-grandfather have probably driven past, or horse and carted, whatever, past that particular waterway. But mostly we see them thinking in terms of hindsight, as in, what more could we have done? Man, I wish I'd taken it more seriously. When they were looking at the future, they were thinking in terms of the protection of the waterway. It became something that they wanted to protect for future generations. So instead of talking about what they were doing now, they were talking about what they wanted their great-grandchildren to be doing in the future. They wanted to continue swimming and enjoying the water in the way that they have. They talked in a way that was more connected. So it was less about that water is the facilitator for me, and it was more about what can I do for water. This beloved waterway that I've talked about, that you've told me is dead, what more can I do for them? And we see them talking about it as a precious and prized resource. So no longer is water just the backdrop to our lives and we expect that it's always going to be there. Water becomes something much more valuable. It is a treasure. So we then took those values and we looked at them and we formed a series of attributes. And this was a list of about 13 different attributes which related to the values that came through in the qualitative stage. We then measured them in two different ways. So we looked at the derived importance as well as the stated importance. So derived importance is more like those things that are more likely to affect your behaviour. So we did this through what's called a max diff analysis, whereby we gave them the list several times and we got them to pick the most and least important from that list. It then works out an average across all of them, and these were the top 3 across all different types of water bodies. Sustains wildlife and ecosystems, the surroundings are preserved, and absence of litter came through as the top 3 derived importance attributes. Further to this, we gave them a list and we got them to pick their top 3. So basically, just tell me what's important. So this is top of mind importance. So these are things that they're likely to say that's really important to them, and therefore things that when it's communicated to them, here are some things that we are going to protect that will speak to them on that level. So we had it remains in their natural form and aesthetic, available for future generations, used and accessed by everyone, supports healthy and diverse ecosystems, suitable for recreational use. So that was all, really interesting, and I liked it. That was cool. And then I found myself going to the beach, running along the river, and thinking about how all this actually functions in my life. This is almost taking over my life. So oh, look at us enjoying it recreationally, and here I am with my inner connection. So I thought the best way to communicate this to you was to use a respondent that we had in our qualitative group and show how these attributes function in their lives, show what motivates them more than money. So we have Morgan. Morgan uses water as a group primarily. I don't know if Morgan is a he or a she. So they like to go to the water with their family and their friends, and they enjoy it in that respect. The use of the water is largely recreational, so as we discussed earlier, it's more in the water. Therefore, things like water health, cleanliness, those are important to Morgan. So here are some quotes from Morgan. So this is one person that these quotes have come from. When we start thinking about form and aesthetic being important, we see things like, this view is worth 1,000 words, an image so special to me, the way it looks. We think about the importance for future generations. It's important we balance the values so that it can be continued to be enjoyed by future generations. Access for everyone. A fisherman's delight, a photographer's dream, nature's best outdoor playground. Everyone is using it. Healthy and diverse ecosystems. We love a trout. The kids like to assist, clambering through rock pools, searching. Recreational use. A barbecue on a warm day, kayaks and boogie boards line the shore. I guess for me, the biggest finding was how engaged these respondents were. So I have conducted a number of projects across a range of subjects, and I am under no illusion that people hate market researchers. Well, they do. It's okay. I'm actually quite nice. This was the first project I have run in 7 years where I have seen the extent of engagement and input from 30 respondents in the online qualitative stage. Every image that you have seen on this presentation was provided by a respondent. I had thousands and thousands of text to go through. I had hundreds of images, videos. People wrote poems. Your residents care. They genuinely care about the water. And when you look at this and you think about these values that have come through, you are 100% right. Motivation can be so much more than money. And they want to see this, that their waterways will continue to be protected. And on a side note, I'd like you to keep protecting them because I want to come back down because I have to leave very soon and I want to see some of these waterways in real life. So thank you so much for having me.